video and audio for the folks online. So, you know.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Here we go.
So what we're going to talk about today is our experiments with using a variety of AI tools in order to create educational materials. And as we went through this, some of it has worked, some of it has not worked. And we've noticed patterns of why some things work and why some things don't work. And we're going to talk about that. We're also going to show you some of the things that we've been able to create. And we'll talk a little bit about moving forward. What kinds of things are we going to be able to do reliably? What directions we've changed from where we thought they were going to start out as, and we've had to go back and rethink a bunch of things, and but mostly talk about what to expect when you're trying to make educational materials. So the main goal is productivity, of course, is using AI tools to reduce time and reduce budgets. And one of the main things I think that is important for most people to keep in mind, and quite frankly, this is a theme all through my experience in legal IT, is that people can tend to get frustrated with new technology because it never lives up to its hype. And people get frustrated, and then people start bad-mouthing it, and then that's it for the tool for a lot of people. Other people keep working with it and keep swearing that it's a panacea for everything, and then there's a debate, and it never works that way. It always works that it can save time and do a lot of tasks for you, but not do everything. And I think that's the main thing to take away, is that it is good for saving time and saving money. And don't expect it to do everything. It's a helper. So with that in mind, so we've been doing a series of experimental projects, summaries of our ElevenLabs books and some of our CALI lessons, creating audio podcasts to do summaries of material and introductions to material in like book chapters and CALI lessons. Video summaries as well as an offshoot, you know, they work together, but pretty much the same thing. We've also started doing a series of case summary experiments. So creating good text-based case summaries of cases in the ElevenLabs books, and then converting those into either audio or video and see how well they cover the material. And Sara is starting to work on the core of some games that we will see. So the big tools that I'm using, Sara will talk about a bunch of other tools that she's using, but I'm using Notebook LM, I'm using Claude, and I'm using Whisper. And the et ceteras there is for when Sara talks. Notebook LM, I'm finding really useful. I don't know if anybody was at Deb Ginsburg's presentation yesterday. I talked about these things a little bit. It is fantastic to create summaries of things. And the reason why I think it's fantastic is because although it can give you absolute madness and has all of the problems that I'm going to talk about, it's got an increasing number of tools to take instructions. And that's something that I'm finding really valuable in that system. I have been experimenting with Claude, needs less instructions. It's also really good in that it will take much larger pieces of text to summarize and work with. and just generally better. You can also put instructions in Claude, but it all goes in the one box. Whisper I have used, got it to work on my local machine and a local installation. Excellent for creating speech to text very accurately. On my home computer, it took about 20 minutes to take about a 25-minute audio and change it into a transcript, but not bad on a local computer, with pretty high accuracy. I use that, and again, this is an example of how to save time, but with not actually necessarily trusting AI to get everything right. I made a audio podcast of a chapter of a book, and started making instructions to Notebook LM to get that as good as possible right then, and then ran it through Whisper to create a transcript that you can actually get it marked up as a, what is it? Subcaptions for audio and video. That way, with all the time markings. And then I went in and edited it until it was accurate. And then we can run it through another AI program that does really good text to speech and get a pretty good audio and a pretty good video. Now, that seems nuts because you're taking an AI, doing what you can with it, spending time with it, and then still having to edit a script and then put it through yet another AI that's going to actually read the script, but then make like avatars that will speak somewhat naturally, almost naturally. But it did save a considerable amount of time. So is it a magic bullet that will do everything? No. But instead of taking days to write a script, it took me hours to do this. And it was still hours, and that's frustrating. But, you know, it saved time, it saved money, which is the point. So the issues, most of you guys know about stuff like this. It just makes outright errors because it tries to reason about things. It makes hallucinations because of the nature of large language models, and keeping in mind what we're calling AI now all the time. It's not the only kind of AI out there. There are also logical reasoning models out there, but these ain't them, right? These are large language models that are made to generate text. And they will do some reasoning because they can relate things to other things and bring together what seems to be relevant. But what seems to be relevant in a large language model, especially when you start getting sophisticated, is not necessarily going to be anything that's actually coherent, right? Crazy stuff happens. And that's my last point, is that lack of depth is always going to be a problem, I think, at least until the singularity happens. It'll keep happening for quite a while. That you won't be able to get the kind of depth of coverage of material that you might want out of using an AI tool, or what you'd expect to be able to use for educational material. You have to supplement it. So I've already talked about what we've been doing, AI generated podcasts, videos. We're working on some game material and case summaries in text, and then converting that even to video. Touched on these things, but this is actually the core of what I'm going to talk about. I'm talking about right now is depth of intellectual content is not easy for most AI. I'm going to talk slower and get it right. So it just doesn't handle it well because it has to draw too many conclusions from the material and it will not get it correctly. And so it just tends to skip over things. As a summarizing tool, it can be really good. But when you summarize, of course, you're always going to lose depth. And controlling how much depth you lose and how much you keep is a very tricky matter. And that takes playing around with. And you're probably never going to be completely satisfied. So you're going to have to finish it off yourself. AI will make guesses at what is significant and what is not. Again, that's related to the depth issue, of course. And it will not always guess correctly because, again, it's a text generation machine. It's not a legal expert, and you can't expect it to be a legal expert. And so it will draw all kinds of conclusions that aren't necessarily correct, because things do seem to be related in the text in one way or another. A set of phrases is used in one context, and then it's used again in another context, but it means very different things in the overall context of what you're talking about. And it's going to assume they're the same sometimes. Oh my God. And you've just got to watch out for these things, read the material, and fix it. AI will make guesses at style and presentation. And it will not always guess right. The worst one I found, I was doing a audio podcast as an introduction to the law of homicide. And it was, okay, this is horrific, but I'll just say what it was to just illustrate how badly this can go wrong. It was talking about voluntary manslaughter. There was a case where a woman had left children in a car and the children died. And at one point, the two avatars just started giggling about, like, oh, that's horrible. Whoa. Right. But it's trying to, it was part of what it was trying to do was make the podcast conversational. So it had a whole bunch of rules about how it was going to put in little bits of banter the whole way through, which was generally okay and sometimes really good. But then I had to instruct it no jokes and instruct it specifically do not laugh at all. And that helped because it just wasn't going to do it right. So AI will also want to employ related material, possibly adding depth because it will want to, but that does greatly increase the danger of hallucination. I found it worked both ways, but I couldn't predict with reasonable certainty when it would add material that actually was unexpected but helpful, and when it would add material that was unexpected and very not helpful. So as I went through, at first I was letting it run through and then reviewing it. And sometimes it was adding cases. And I looked at it and I said, oh, you know, this is the kind of thing that people have been getting sanctioned by courts for allowing. And several times, I always went through and looked up the cases just to see what was happening. And there were several occasions where everything was an actual court case and they were relevant, and it was filling things out, but not always. And it does increase the danger of hallucinations, so you let it go on in that way at your own risk, and usually not a good thing to do. So handling the madness, give very specific instructions. My instructions when I'm doing these kinds of experiments are to very specifically limit your discussion, limit your summary to only what is presented in the main text. Specific instructions, and I think, Lance, you may have some things to say about this too. Instruct on the order of material to be presented very specifically. So when we're doing like the summary of a chapter of a book or something, The instruction is very specifically present material in the order of the source text. And Notebook LLM will obey that, which is good. Mostly obey it. Sometimes it gets weird, but you can put in instructions to do that. And then be prepared to iterate with more instructions for errors arising from each iteration. And that is the general approach using AI to generate educational materials, is and give it some general instructions. Don't go beyond what I give you. Here's the order in which I want you to present the material, either in the order presented in the original text or something else. So for example, we're doing case summaries, and found Notebook LM and Claude were both great at, but they're all great at summarizing, right? But in Notebook LM, we had more control because you can keep adding little notes that give specific, you can, and instead of just putting in notes that are additional data, you can give it instructions on how to do things and how you want it to be. So again, don't refer to anything outside the original text. And then for a case summary, I said, present the issue, give the name of the case first, because you have to tell it that. Then give the main issues that are presented in the case. Then give me a summary of the facts of the case. Then state the conclusions that the court made. And it followed that. And with minimal editing at that point, we're getting good quality case summaries that were following a very set format, so that if we created many case summaries, they would all have the same format and would be useful in that respect. So finally, like I was talking about all this time, remember, it is only a tool. When it is no longer useful, quit and finish it yourself. And remember what it's really, really good for. It can collate, it can summarize. Going to have it do anything more than that, you're doing it at risk. And give it a try, but don't expect it to be perfect, and don't be upset if it's not. We can try, but see what happens. So that was my part. I'm going to talk about like not higher level, but more theoretical stuff. And now Sarah's going to talk about what we've actually managed to accomplish.
Yeah, this works. Wonderful. All right. Hi, I'm Sara Smith. I'm the Director of Curriculum Development at CALI. Yeah, John talked about the content creation using AI stage, and I'm going to be kind of talking about what comes after that. So thank you. I'm going to start with a little bit of a disclaimer, and that is that everything I'm about to show you is we're in the experimentation and the exploration stage, right? We're trying to figure out like what we can do, but also like what we should do, right? We're exploring tools, what's available, what kinds of things can we create with the tools that are out there. So there is not a set path for us yet, right? And we will be pulling people into these conversations to kind of think about, do students want these, right? Better yet, are they good for student learning, right? These are all questions in the air. I will not attempt to answer those today. Do faculty want these, right? Also, will they participate in their creation? As you know, CALI partners with faculty, academic support professionals, law librarians to create our content, to review our content, to hopefully assign our content. So the faculty are very important in the content creation process. And so we need their help, right? They serve as our subject matter experts, and I'll tell you why in a second. Will these help us to scale, right? Like we can do a lot of stuff, but as John was talking about, there are times where the amount of iterations and the amount of work that goes into using one of these tools, at the end of the day, you're like, how much time did I just spend? And could we have just done it the originally, right? So these are questions that we have to constantly be considering and answering. And I think the coolest one is like, can they allow us to do something we couldn't otherwise do, right? And so a good example, I think, of that is like, we can't hire videographers, right? Like, we're just not in a position to like hire a bunch of actors and hire a bunch of people to perform certain scripts and videos. But is there a tool that allows us to create that like that, right? So those are the kind of opportunities that we're looking for. An overview of the process, very high level overview. As John mentioned, we are using AI to create the initial scripts. Sometimes the source content is a CALI specific product, right? So a CALI lesson, a chapter, a book. We then do our own review and revision. Sometimes it's just organizing the material, setting it up for a subject matter expert and author review. So if it's a book chapter, we will go to the author first to ask, would you like to serve as the reviewer, or someone who teaches or has experience teaching in that area to review the materials before they're put into something else. And then we take that final script and feed it into a video tool, or in one instance into H5P and into law books. This is just kind of a screenshot of like the various levels we've seen in terms of like the redlining review stage. Like, so this one looks pretty good, right? There's just some key terms that we had reviewed by the author, right? This one, okay, this is a multiple choice question that we had the AI create. It took a little bit of work to get it into shape. And then we have things like this, right? Where it's like, okay, it kind of looks like it was rewritten at this point, and those raise the questions, right? Like, when it gets to this level of sophistication in the material, is it worth starting with the AI? And do we stick to things like this that are a little more straightforward, right? So what's the best application of the AI in this process? All right, we already talked about the examples, so I'm actually just going to show you the examples instead of talking about them again. All right, I'm going to talk a little bit about video tools because that's primarily where I was focusing. I really wanted full control over the script and the on-screen content. I know there's a lot of programs out there where you can feed it some material and then it makes it for you, right? They choose what goes on the screen, they choose what they say. I didn't want that. I know it takes a little bit longer, but I think it's really important to be able to control exactly what they say. I want to be able to add pauses and adjust the pronunciation, right? So these are the kind of features that I was looking for. I really wanted a robust graphics and media library because I'm going to make videos. I want them to look kind of pretty, right? Otherwise, again, what's the point? And I wanted the ability to layer those graphics and media and be able to time their entrance when I wanted to. And then, of course, easy generation, right? I wanted to be able to iterate. I wanted to be able to easily make changes and then produce a new version of it. All right. And then, of course, the balance is like, we want to have a quality product with that scalability, right? Want to have something cool, but we want to be able to make a lot of them in a short amount of time that we couldn't otherwise do without the tools that we're using. All right. So the first one I looked at was Synthesia. Not the first. That's a lie. I looked at a lot of them. The first main one that I considered was Synthesia. You've probably heard of it. It's probably known as like one of the better ones out there. I do think the avatars are, in my opinion, some of the best. But we ran into an issue with their content moderation policy. So they have very strict content moderation policies that basically puts different categories of material into certain buckets. And the law, even if it's legal education, reviewed by faculty members, so on and so forth, falls into a restricted bucket. Unfortunately, you don't find this out in the trial period. And unfortunately, you don't find out until you've actually put all the time into creating a video. You go to generate it. It goes through hours of manual review on their end, and then they reject it. So after multiple appeals to explain what our purpose was, I found out that, well, they wouldn't tell me a reason. They work with automated moderation systems. They're unable to give me specific details on it. Basically, it was rejection across the board. I was unable to move forward with one of their avatars. Even if I could use one of their avatars, that manual review process that's worked into the generation of every video made it not feasible because it would have taken hours. But they said you can create your own personal avatar, right? So the restriction was really limited to their avatars. And so I'm going to show you something that's me, but not me. All right. So this
brought to you by CALI.
is my
This video is for educational purposes only and does not constitute legal advice. By the end of this video, you will be able to define the elements of battery, apply the elements of battery to some common fact situations, and spot something close to it, such as throwing a rock that hits the plaintiff, poisoning food which they eat, or causing a dog to bite the plaintiff. Importantly,
All right.
even the slightest touch can be enough to constitute a.
Okay, so that is my avatar. I had to sit there for a little bit, read a little script, and now I have an avatar that I can apply to any script. Unfortunately, the personal avatars have their own problems, right? When you use one of their avatars, it comes out kind of perfect. Like the syncing is as good as it's going to get. When you make your own avatar, it's really difficult to get a good take, like the lighting, because they're doing a cutout of you. The lighting is weird. God forbid you have any sort of personality, because it doesn't know when to apply the personality. So like John's experience, there were times where in my little take, I would kind of like smile or laugh, and they would insert that at the most inappropriate times of the video, right? And I looked like it was not okay, right? So yeah, occasional facial animation glitches, right? Just random smiles out of nowhere. So the take that I had to do was very like, and then this, right? So I had to remove all personality in order to create an avatar that was good. And ultimately what that resulted in was it wasn't perfect. So I had to then go back and edit the video that it generated. That doesn't seem worth it, right? Again, that's adding an extra step that like, I don't see the point in this. So is that scalable? So we landed on Colossian, right? It's got all the necessary features that I wanted. It has no content moderation that I'm aware of, right? Because I can generate a video like that, like it literally takes 10 minutes. And so that's what we landed on. And I can use their avatars, and it doesn't have to be me because that's so creepy, right? Also for about the same amount of money, you get unlimited minutes in Colossian, whereas Synthesia limited you to a certain number per month. Not yet. All right, so I'm going to show you a couple more examples of what we've done. So that was Synthesia. I'm going to show you a video now in Colossian.
Welcome
and
to this
is a
video on
case
the
summary, or
1976
a lesson
Copyright
summary.
Act requirements, brought to you by CALI. This video is for educational purposes only and does not constitute legal advice. By the end of this video, you should be able to identify the 3 requirements a work must satisfy to be eligible for copyright protection under the 1976 Copyright Act. Section 102B of the Act explicitly excludes certain subject matter from copyright protection, even if it is part of an otherwise copyrightable work. This excluded subject matter includes any idea, procedure, process, system, method of operation, concept, principle, or discovery, regardless of the form in which it is described, explained, illustrated, or embodied in such work. This distinction between eligible and ineligible content is known as the idea expression dichotomy, and it is a fundamental principle of copyright law. While the specific expression of an idea can be copyrighted, the term idea also methods. Let's look at some examples. The Harry Potter series characters and stories are copyrightable expressions, but the idea of a wizarding school is not. A specific narrative about the Civil War can be copyrighted, but the underlying historical facts cannot.
You get the idea with that. All right.
A unique
So the original content for that was actually a chapter of an ElevenLabs book, right? So we fed that into Notebook LM. We said restrict the script to just the material that we've uploaded into the system. This one is an example using Colossian of a case summary.
In this video, we're going to discuss the case of Bailey v. West. It's an interesting contract case that explores the concept of implied contracts, which result when the parties had no express contract, but the law treats them as if they did. Let's break it down. The facts are pretty straightforward. Bailey was a veterinarian who provided services to West's horse, which was sick.
All right, all of these examples are online. All right, so I mentioned a casebook companion too. The idea would be to create supplemental materials that correspond to our casebooks and that use that content to create these materials. So what we did was we did an example for a constitutional rights book. The source content is a chapter from that book. And what we created were, and this is in law books, and we used H5P after having created the original materials and getting them reviewed. So we have key terms, multiple choice questions, and case briefs. So here's the key terms from that chapter. We did drop down instead of flashcards because I thought it would be easier for them to see it all on top of one another and compare. So those are the key terms that were pulled, and then a series of multiple choice questions, right? So we had AI generate multiple choice questions, and then we used H5P to put it into law books. And the idea would be that, each chapter in the book, right? So here's the contents. Again, we only have chapter 1 because we are experimenting, right? Each chapter in the book and each book could have its own set of key terms of multiple choice questions. And really, it takes a couple minutes to generate these, but then it has to go through that review process. And that's where it gets a little slowed down, but we think it's really important for that quality control, right? And then at the very bottom, we have case briefs, right? So all of the cases that are discussed are briefed here. So we could have chapters for every one of our books if we choose to take that path. All right. And then the last thing I want to show is we are using Colossian to start creating simulations. And so this was it's just a little video. I'll show you.
To this CALI interview simulator on character evidence. The defendant is on trial for larceny. The prosecution has rested, and the defense has called a character witness as its first witness. You should play the role of the prosecutor and make objections where appropriate. Don't take trial tactics into account. You should object whenever a question or an answer is objectionable. The judge will rule on each objection. The defense counsel commences her direct examination now.
Good afternoon. What is your name? My name is Samantha Smith. And what is your occupation? I am the owner and manager of a sporting goods store.
Objection. Motion denied, counsel. The answer may stand.
And how long have you owned the store?
Objection, Your Honor. Overruled. How long the witness has been in her occupation does not create any issues.
All right. So I just had a little example there. So I used Colossian for that too. I mean, it's cool because you can put multiple avatars on the screen. You can assign pieces of a script to the different avatars. You can get each of them their own voice. And what we did was we put the script in and then layered interactivity on top, right? So in this one, you can object whenever you want to object. And whenever you object in that video, it will give you the reply. So it'll give the judge's ruling on your objection and the reasoning behind it. Ultimately, you would get a report at the end stating, when you should have objected but didn't, when you did object and you shouldn't have, so on and so forth. We could see that applying to other situations like depositions, client interviewing, negotiations, things like that. I mean, all we have to do is take a script and then we decide what those interactions with the video should be. And then it jumps to the appropriate part in the script. So I think that's a really exciting use of the Colossian video tool. And that's all I have. So I'm going to turn it over to Lance for his portion. We'll take Q&A at the end for all of these. All right.
Thank you. Let's see if I have my stuff here. All right. Before I start, for reasons that will become very clear shortly, the opinions expressed here are my own. They are not part of the University of Utah, where I'm from. And these also do not represent the views and opinions of Sara or John either, because they have no idea what I'm going to say. So they've shown you some really good ways to do it. I'm going to show you some really bad ways to do it and why I think you should do it the bad way. Sometimes good enough is good enough. So do it fast and cheap and good and have fiction. So Hollywood, they do it good and fast. I mean, I think the Elon Trump breakup biopic is already halfway done filming. It'll be out on Netflix this month. You've got your weird cousin who's super good at Final Cut Pro, or so he tells you. He can make something pretty good for you. But
might I interrupt for a moment?
yes,
Still, the Zoom is still showing the previous PowerPoint. We do an unshare and a reshare on the news.
sorry, you can just.
For virtual attendees. There we go.
Oh, this is the only mic that works. Okay, I will not wander. All right.
You can wonder because there's video of the entire room and of you.
Okay, they were just saying that this is the only mic that works in this room, so the attendees couldn't hear me.
Good point.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, but for those public law schools that don't have a ton of budget, we have to do cheap and fast. So to do this, we're going to use Gamma, ElevenLabs. We do this for about $40 a month, and it takes less than an hour to make a video or several videos. And why this works is the students need the information, not ME word E production values. It'll be great to do it better, but that's not always realistic. And the real reason I love this is a year later or 2 years later, when something changes, you can go back in and you can update these videos in minutes. Right now, we get a professor who will say, oh, at this video at minute 4:37, we need to cut 26 minutes out and replace it with this. And we need to do this to 37 videos. It's not sustainable, not easy to do. We're here, we can do the whole thing quite rapidly. And the adjuncts that have created all this, when they leave, well, we've cloned their voice, so we own them forever. Actually, we don't really clone the adjunct's voice, but the voices we do use, we can continue using. I mean, technically, I guess I am an adjunct and I have cloned my voice, so we do technically clone adjuncts' voices. All right, so as we've talked about, you have to start with a good script. That's really what's important here. Start with a good script. The rest of it is just graphics. Stick it into Gamma, it'll spit out a bunch of decent stuff pretty quickly. Watch ElevenLabs pronounce things differently every time. It's great. And then slap it together. So you get videos that are 85% as good as if you went through the instructional designers on campus, did the whole production, but you get it very, very quickly. You don't get fancy Ken Burns effects, Morgan Freeman's voice, or any awards, but you do get accident images. I don't know why, but those are important to have, apparently. So use this when your evidence professor says, hey, I need 20 videos and my class starts next week. You could actually do that with this method. Those compliance videos that nobody's going to watch anyway, it's great. Don't do this for your main promotional video for your law school. And don't do it for the people that are giving you money, because we're trying to save money, not lose it. So we need to educate the students, and we need to do it on a budget. If these don't get made, then what's the point? So we need to do something that works rather than not doing it at all. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Like this presentation at all was made in less than 20 minutes. And I mean, you're learning from it, right? And we don't need any Oscars. So now let's do a live demo. What could go wrong? So I usually start with, grab a script. Let's do, so I had Claude last night write sorry, I've been using Macs lately, and then I go back to PC and you can't, anything. All right. So of course, I'm going to do a live demo. So ElevenLabs yesterday, while we were all here, announced a new model, which changes everything I was going to show. So let's do a presentation on what that new model does. So you want to come in here, create with AI. You don't want to do this create from a one-line prompt in a few seconds, because that's going to give you AI gibberish. Don't do that. Do what these guys have done. Work through with your subject matter experts, get a really good script, and then you're going to paste it in to here. And the important part is you put these 3 dashes in between where each of your slides should go. That tells Gamma where to put a new slide. And then you want to tell it a traditional slide. That'll make it the standard PowerPoint 16:9 format. Hit continue, and then it is going to ask you a few questions here. You want to choose card by card, and that's going to break it out wherever you put those lines. So we're just doing a three slide presentation here. You can choose preserve if you're breaking it out into very small slides, and then it will try to keep the text as accurate as you've put in. But on this one, since we're using a lot of text per slide, we're going to tell it to condense it. And let's say medium for how much it's going to put. Now, what's really great about Gamma, and I think this has to be heavily subsidized by a bunch of VC funding, and the prices will go up at some point because they have all of the major image generation models, except for Midjourney, which doesn't do API a whole lot. So you've got the new OpenAI's image generation built in here, which is great. You've even got the Flux Context, the brand new one that just came out a couple days ago. It's in there. And you've got the Google ones in there and all the others. We'll just go ahead and use the ChatGPT one. And then it's good to, when you choose a theme, it'll style the images to that theme so they all stay kind of the same. If we were going to do this for real, I'd put in something like colorful and engaging papercraft style illustrations or some sort of image theme that'll tie all of the presentations together. And you can use those for every video in the series so they all look like they're matching. We'll go ahead and see what it comes up with today just for fun. For the optional instructions, as John mentioned, you want to be very specific and say, okay, the information that's on slide 1 needs to stay on slide 1, because Gamma will love to pull something from slide 3 and stick it into slide 1 because it thinks it fits better there. But when you're reading the script and going through the slides, that doesn't work very well. We only have 3 slides, so we'll skip that for now. But when you're doing this in real life, put in very specific instructions saying, keep everything in the same order, do it the same way. You hit continue, you pick a theme. Let's see, we'll let it pick one for us today. How about, yeah, this is fine. I will caution you when you are using, for instance, one of these themes that has a gradient in the title, those will not translate to PowerPoint quite as well. Though you'll lose the gradient and you'll just get like a purple color or whatever it's decided. So we'll go with this black and green one. Why not? Then you hit generate and you just watch it do all your work for you. Of course, now it's going to be slow that I'm standing here in front of you all. Well, there we go. So it just uses LLMs behind the scenes to condense your script. It will put little, icons, everything else. The first thing you want to do is make sure you delete that part that puts your name, because you do not want your name on this. This is good enough. This is not good enough to put your name on. And
You could be editing it while it's generated.
yeah, so you can just edit while it's generated. It's creating the images. Depending on what model you've chosen, we picked OpenAI's model, which is very slow, but it does a good job, especially with text, as you can see. So this script we gave it is introducing the new V3 model for ElevenLabs, which just came out yesterday, and it does a lot of emotional emphasis on the voices. So that is what it is talking about here. So it's done a really good job of breaking down what we're saying. It's added in, some great images. And then if you don't like these images, you can come in here, you can click on it, and you can say, hey, let's make, you can say what you want different. You can enhance the prompts. You can, adjust all your settings. You can even adjust the image model it's going to do, generate it. It'll give you 4 more images that you can pick from. Again, they must be burning through their VC funding quickly, because you can generate, from what I can tell, unlimited amounts of images and content offered. I think it's like $130 a year is what I'm paying for this. So basically free. So, it creates a PowerPoint for you. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll read it again. What was the copyright to?
Yeah, so what I'm looking in, it says that you do, whether it doesn't look like they're training on your models. I was looking into that last night because I knew that question was going to come up, and it's a little unclear. So definitely it will live on their servers. Yeah, definitely look into that. And then when you're done with all this, you export it. You can export it as a PowerPoint. It will not add in the fancy animations and whatnot. In PowerPoint like this, you will have to add those in yourself if you want those, which takes a bit of time. So you have to decide whether or not you want to have those in there. Then we hop over to ElevenLabs, and let's see, I did not put this in yet. I like to come into the studio. I create a new studio script and I paste in the script that we already have. The way, if you have it here in the studio, you can export each slide's audio very quickly. So you'll come in here, you'll pick a voice. Don't know which one is. I don't know where my voices have gone. Let's see if we can find it. Yeah, here we go. So the only thing worse than listening to your own voice is listening to a clone of your own voice, but we'll go ahead and do it. So you hit generate, and you also want to make sure.
ElevenLabs released version 3 of their text-to-speech model yesterday as an alpha release. This represents a significant evolution in AI voice. ElevenLabs released version 3 of their text-to-speech.
You want to make sure you you switch it from until end to selection. Otherwise, it's going to generate the entire script. So anyway, that's doing my voice. We'll have it do Bella here for the second.
However, there are important limitations to understand. First, this is an alpha release, which means it's experimental and not recommended for production use.
Here, there. What I do with each one of these is after it's generated, I would normally download it, but I guess not today.
ElevenLabs release.
Okay, so you download each one. I also turn the settings on in Chrome where it pops up that window asking me where I want to download it and what I want to save it to. Because the first one you download, you want to give it a name.
ElevenLabs released version.
Give it something like, we'll call this, ElevenLabs. This is going to be video 01, and this is audio 01. And then the next one, you'll name 02. And it's really quick because you'll click save, it'll pop up the thing. You click the previous one, erase the 1, put in the 2, hit enter. Do that over and over and over again. I've tried to get AI agents to do this for me. They're not quite there yet. They tend to get lost. So you can go through, you can do 20 slides doing this in a couple minutes. Works pretty well. For this third one, since we're talking about V3, let's just really quickly, you can't do V3 in the studio yet, but we can do it here for instant speech. So let's put it in here. Yeah, sure, we'll do Rachel. We'll even have it do enhance, which will add in the tags that let it do the emotion. It'll probably just tell this to do it as like a calm or a narrator. Yeah, we'll see what happens. Playing around with this last night, it is amazing when it works, and a lot of times it does not work.
That's the synthesis markup language.
Yeah, basically.
Regarding pricing, version 3 is currently available at an 80% discount through the end of June 2025 for users accessing it through the web interface. This promotional pricing makes it more accessible for experimentation. The API access isn't publicly available yet. You need to contact their sales team for early access. For educational content creation, version 3.
Yeah, so you can see it didn't really seem any different than normal. So when you're creating educational content like this, don't use the new V3 version, at least not yet. Every slide, you'll get a totally different voice and feel, even if you're using the same voice. It won't be consistent across, so use the standard voice. But I did do one last night where it put in actual emotions, and it came out pretty interesting.
The defendant approaches the bench. Your Honor, I object. Wait, that's not right. I mean, we move to dismiss based on sufficient evidence.
So when it works, it actually does a really good job. But again, a lot of the times you'll get just weirdness. Sometimes instead of saying in an informative voice, it'll say informative regarding pricing, and it'll read all the tags. Right? So then you've got your 15, 20, whatever audio files. You're going to use this plugin called PP Tool, or from PP Tools. So pptools.com. That sounds a lot worse when I'm saying it into the microphone. You're going to go to the free tools and choose the narrator. I'm not going to go through how to install this and what it does, but there's a whole PDF that explains it. It only works on Windows, but it's a PowerPoint plugin. You put all of your audio files in the same folder as your PowerPoint. you run this plugin and it will put each audio file on the slide that it goes with based on the numbering that you've done when you downloaded it. Takes about 2 seconds, and it adds in the timing for each slide based on the audio. And then you just export the whole thing as a video, and you're done. So you can create a ton of these lectures. If you have the scripts written, you can just power through them. And you can make, a couple an hour even. If you want to add in animations and really do the timing, you have to bring it into PowerPoint. You'll have to edit it. You'll have to clean it up and fix it. And you don't get the talking heads like what you were doing. You can add those in if you want to. I don't know, I find it gives you kind of the valley. Yeah. It's I don't know, makes it a little creepy almost with just the voices. I think the voices have gotten good enough that you don't notice most of the time. Actually, in my course, I use my own voice for the first 2 weeks of the course. And then I used that audio to clone my voice and used my cloned voice for the next 2 weeks of the course. And the students didn't notice. If anything, they thought I just got better at reading the scripts. So the AI is better at using my voice than I am. So that's it. Have any questions for you? Yeah.
Back on the one with, I don't remember what it was called, ElevenLabs, where you're doing the visual, turning it into a slideshow or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Can you import your own theme or?
Yes.
Give it, a set of colors to work with if you want to
Yeah.
brand it or something?
So if you have your brand template already, you can import it. It does that. You can import your PowerPoint that you've already created. It'll clean it up. You can you are, I will say, limited to what you can do in this. Like, let's say you want this to be up here more in the corner. You can't do that. I could drag it to the bottom, but I can't put it where, because this is actually using a sort of a markdown language in the way that it does it. And it works great on their website when you're presenting, but when you export it, you lose a lot of this. So, but I also find if you are okay with that, it's that 80-20 principle. You can get a lot done really quickly because you can't fiddle with it and get everything exactly where you want it and spending all these times on the details that maybe don't matter so much in the end. I know lawyers probably don't like to hear maybe the details don't matter, but sometimes maybe they don't. Any other questions, or do we have anything for John and Sarah either?
Student reactions, because, and I know it's just learning and it's being, they can't tell it's you or the AI, but I don't know, do they like getting a lot of stuff shoveled in them in this format?
Yeah, I was worried about that when I was using this to do my course. But it's really very similar to the way that these videos were done, especially for the online. We do this a lot for the Masters of Legal Studies students that are taking the courses online.
Mm-hmm.
What they're traditionally getting is a PowerPoint with a talking head, reading the slides and clicking through next, which this is essentially is, only created much, much faster without the talking head, and then we can update it quickly. It's not quite as good, but I don't know how much the talking head is adding, especially when that talking head is done by an adjunct who now isn't teaching the course anymore. So you've got these videos from a different professor. And I don't know.
Right, so you don't have any opinion on the whole idea of lectures themselves may not be the best way to do the teaching.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. The lectures themselves are often not the best way. I really like to use these for a flipped classroom style. So you create a bunch of these short, less than 10-minute videos. You watch them before they come to class, and then in class you have a live interaction, demos. I think that is the best way to use stuff like this.
What's your process for going back and updating? You just
so
update the script and then run.
Yeah, so since each audio file is individual for the slide, all I have to do is, update the sentence or two that's in the script, throw that back into ElevenLabs. The voice is on ElevenLabs. are guaranteed to be there for 2 years. There'll be 2 years notice before those voices leave. So you can use the same voice, the same model, regenerate that audio really quickly, just drop it back in the PowerPoint, export the PowerPoint again, making the really quick process when we have to update it, because that's one of the things that takes us forever is after a couple of years, we want to update the slide and this slide or this video and this video. And all we have is a video file. So we have to cut these parts out of the video, have them re-record sections, throw it back in, and it a lot of work. And then they're wearing different clothing, and it's weird. So I think this way just works pretty well for what it is. And this should not be your entire course, like we mentioned. This works great for flipped classrooms or supplemental videos. Yeah.
Why not?
Why not have this be your whole?
Yeah, like, don't you think you get to a point where you could just feed in the table of contents, and it could create, the lecture for you, be in your voice, for the entire term. Then you could say, hey, do the exam, and it could do the exam, and you say, hey, grade the exam, then you can grade the exam. Like, don't you think that would?
Well, I think that's probably where we're going, unfortunately. We're just gonna have I'll have my bot talk to your bot, and then we'll figure something out.
And although I know that's a little bit good, but seriously, like, where do you draw the line when you say, like, what is the criteria that you use when you decide how much to and how much not to use of like AI, that's, I guess that is the serious question on that.
Yeah, and so I use AI for something that is kind of boring and mindless for me, which is typing bullet points into PowerPoint slides and trying to find an image. I hate that, and I don't know that this image that I put with it, is it really super necessary for this information? I guess you could say, well, why have the image at all? Get into the real, learning science of it. But when you're trying to make a bunch of these quickly, the content is what's important, and what the bullet points say, as long as they're following the content, and you definitely you'll check these as you go through. Don't just not read the slides and send them out. But I don't know that that's the kind of work that AI is good at, condensing it into bullet points, doing the busy work.
PowerPoint's accessible.
When you bring them into PowerPoint, they're just text and images. I do not believe it has alt text for the images, so you would have to, I haven't checked that, you'll have to do that. But it will add in the captions and that support when you do
The transcript.
yeah. And actually what I do is I will throw all these scripts into an 11 or a notebook LM notebook, and I share that with the students, so they have all the scripts in a notebook LM that they can ask questions. John,
Just gonna say, John, you had us reading a Place Cherokee article not long ago. Talking about students using ChatGPT and AI tools in order to do their work. And the big distinction he brought out is that the value of a paper that is the value of the assignment is the experience that the student goes through. The assignment, doing of the assignment that there's a similar thing going on when you're creating educational PowerPoints and these kinds of things, and even like the case summaries and the short videos that we're making can be useful supplements. They can also appeal to people of different learning. Just reading and reading and reading, you could have some audio, and that can be very helpful to people. Doing an introductory material before the lecture can be really useful. But I don't think they're going to be anything more than useful. Is really good. But it's not gonna be everything because you have to engage with the student. Are limited in their ability to engage by their very nature. And but that doesn't, but like I'm saying, doesn't mean they're not useful. Have a place.
Can I say that you just said the opposite of what I was thinking, which was actually the important part, because turn that inside out. Ask the question is, does higher education exist because videos are hard to make? So what is actually the value proposition of a higher education model that we have? And that is what you're describing, which is connection between somebody who knows the material, who understands it from a lifetime of dealing with it, and somebody who wants to understand that. Because there's a difference between knowing and understanding.
Right, and there's a big difference between training and educating. And you can instruct people step by step on how to do a whole lot of things, and you can send them out in the world and they'll be someone's useful. And you can shove facts into somebody's head without engaging with them enough for them to really understand content.
And then what do they have?
And it's like, I don't know if anybody's a fan of The Prisoner, 1960. Must be wonderful. Okay. There was the episode called The General, where they had a computer that was everybody's fault. And the big argument in the end is that nobody really understood. And then the boss of the prison said. And
Quantifiable. So if you're beholden on metrics, then by all means cabbages.
it is absolutely quantifiable.
Ah.
Well. Education stuff. But I have my own positions on these things, and that's what my position is. Not speaking for anybody who may. Yes, I think.
All right, yeah.
That's what. So, what's always.
Oh, no.
Got AI tools for writing the assignment. You keep using AI to answer questions, and then you start using AI to grade. Then the computer to do something. Electronic data.